Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to our Bible study class. It is presented to you from the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America. And today is October 14th, 2017. And our moderator today is Luann from New York.
Morning. Our reading is from Christian Healing and Other Writings by Mary Baker Eddy. When we understand that God is what the Scriptures have declared, namely life, truth, and love, we shall learn to reach heaven through principle instead of pardon, and this will make us honest and laborious, knowing that we shall receive only what we earn.
Excellent.
Topic
Thank you.
today
Yeah,
is
wonderful. Thank you.
If anybody wants to make a comment on that.
That's a good statement of truth, because people want things that they haven't earned, but the requirement is to earn them. To be like a law of God, maybe.
Yeah, when you earn it, it's really yours. No one can take it from you. It's yours.
The greatest gift we can give to anyone is to teach them how to earn their way through life.
At times you think that just pleading is what does it, but no, we have to learn. Just like Christ Jesus gave the example so that we can follow by doing.
That's actually a
Interesting.
wonderful comment, because it corrects the conception that prayer is a pleading. That's not prayer at all. There's recognizing the presence and power of God instead of pleading for something.
It's interesting that earn is inside the word learn.
Oh, yeah. That is interesting. I've noticed.
You earn when you learn,
Yeah.
and learn when you earn.
When you earn something, I think it's important to cherish what you've earned and not just neglect it.
Yeah, that's right. You can lose it if you're not grateful and cherish it.
Like that it had the word to reach heaven through principle instead of pardon in that paragraph. I think like a lot of people think, well, I pray to God, so I'm going to go to heaven. But they don't live the life. I think it's important to understand that we need to live in Christ in order to reach heaven through principle.
Yeah.
If they would live the life, they would be in heaven where and when they are right now.
Yeah.
Well, heaven is your state of mind.
That's right, and it can be heaven on earth.
State of thought that is in rapport with the one mind, in rapport with God. And it is reached through principle, not by paying off the priest or, buying your way or whatever.
But this reminds me of the article that Mrs. Singletary wrote about earning your oil. It's in the Liberator magazine.
Right, yeah. Something you earn, not something you take from someone else or quote. You have to earn it. So, okay.
Okay, our topic today is the true vine. Bible readings are from John 15, 1 through 11. The first question is, where are Jesus and the disciples at this time? Beginning of this chapter.
Well, they're in Jerusalem, and I believe it's at the Last Supper after he washed the disciples' feet.
Yeah, this is part of his instruction to his disciples at the Last Supper, isn't it?
At the top of the page in the Bible, it calls it the farewell discourse. I thought that was an interesting way to phrase that.
Yeah, and all of what Jesus said is important, but certainly his, what you may call his final words, are extremely important. So we need to take heed to what he's saying to the disciples, and then it's also true for us today.
That's where he promised us the Holy Comforter.
That's right. Yes, because he knew how sad the disciples must feel at his leaving. They were very, very close. So these were words of comfort and encouragement.
And also teaching them what they have to do in order to receive what he has promised them.
Yeah, and he's explaining to them why he has to leave them, which is kind of interesting.
He said that he had to leave because the Comforter, so that the Comforter will be able to come.
Yeah, and so why is that?
The Comforter is something that we can hold on to forever. It's not involved in any person.
Yeah, they still had somewhat of a personal sense of him, didn't they?
Yes.
He knew that was not the right sense. He knew that he had to leave in order to force them to go even higher, have their own totally impersonal relationship with God.
Then after the sort of Pentecostal time, they were able to heal.
Yeah, and after they saw the resurrection,
Of course.
and they realized all that Jesus said was true. If they hadn't realized or understood it before, it was undeniable. And we must feel that in our own hearts, too, that this science and this healing power is undeniable, not questionable. As we talked about last week, the pure heart sees and understands this. You don't question it or think, oh, that's preposterous. Anyone else on that question?
We'll go on to number 2 then. What was Jesus' concern for teaching this parable to his disciples?
Someone can read Jeremiah.
For of old time I have broken thy yoke and burst thy bands, and thou saidst, I will not transgress. When upon every high hill and under every green tree thou wanderest, playing the harlot. Yet I had planted thee a noble vine, wholly a right seed. How then art thou turned into the degenerate plant of a strange vine unto me.
Thank you. What was his concern?
Their idolatry.
He didn't want him to turn to the false vine. Really.
Baal.
Didn't want them to turn from the Christ and from God, that they would abide in the Christ and love one another.
Hi. So, Miss Tom, I was thinking in reading this that he's saying that, I've taught you a lot of things, I've shown you a lot of things, I've given you a lot of things, and when I'm no longer here, you better not forget those things, and you better do something. And he was telling them that if you do nothing, it says here that the branch that don't bear any fruit will be taken away. Those that bear fruit, he's going to make sure that more fruit is brought forth. You know what I mean? So be productive. Don't sit there and do nothing. I think that's kind of what he's telling you, is that you don't do nothing, do something. Just because I'm not here doesn't mean you can't do anything. You should do something.
And that is what we know to be true today, right now. And that's true, too. Mrs. Eddy is no longer with us. So all the more that we do something. Isn't that true? So you can ask yourself, what more can I do?
Don't want to be among the 70 that left no record.
Exactly. And Linda has mentioned about, we have no volunteers coming up for Bible study. And if we get very few responses, we will discontinue doing this. It shouldn't be up
we
to...
do. I have one for next week.
Who is it? You?
Me.
Okay. All right, well, we have come, but it's a bit like pulling hen's teeth. And Linda was saying, and a few people should not be left to do all of this. You should all be active. You should be all volunteering, and you should all come with answers. We're not here, with a bird feeder where you all just come and take. This should be giving. And that's what Jesus was talking about, wasn't he? You're all struck dumb. No one wants
This is the reason that we're studying this, because it's telling us that we better be doing things.
Yes, it is the reason we're studying this. And if any of you think we're busy, we're all busy. So,
The last time about the Bible that the apostles turned to Jesus for answers, they'd try to heal someone and they'd say, "Why can we not heal him?" And Jesus would have to answer to that and explain it to them. And now Jesus is leaving. He wants them to be able to do this work on their own, with him, abiding in him. But without him, to get the direct answers from as a personal friend.
thank you.
He's afraid that if they run across some kind of hardship or hard times or something, that they'll just completely turn away from believing in him.
And he warns them that it will happen and to be prepared for it, doesn't he?
And it certainly has happened, hasn't it? So
I read that they're supposed to repent of thy sins, so the iniquity which is thy correction may not be thy wound. So they should take it and go forward.
But not be thy what?
Wound.
Ruin?
Yes.
Oh, ruin.
Ruin. Oh.
Anyone else?
And we'll get into number 3. Why did Jesus refer to himself as the true vine and his Father as the husbandman?
This was my favorite question. There's so much here. Part of it, I'll just share a little bit. It goes back to Jesus knowing that he was the true and faithful Israelite. He was the source of all rich and deep blessing. And God, as the husbandman, is watching over everything. Family, finances, relationships. God, and he has all responsibility for us. And the Father and Son are always cooperating together for us, operating in us. I love that question.
That's a beautiful answer. Where did you get that?
Okay, I part of it's from the NIV Bible, and then I went back to our Bible where it talks about he is a faithful Israelite. And, that's where I work from.
Oh, good, thank you.
The vine is an important part of this, isn't it? What's the relationship between a vine and the branches and the husbandman he talks about here?
The vine branches.
What was that? Luann?
Vine feeds the branches.
It provides everything for the branches, doesn't it?
Yeah, the nutrition and even the support.
So what is Jesus referring to when he refers to himself here? When he says, I am the true vine?
He's saying that the Father doeth the work. Vine feeds fruit.
Who is the I that he is referring to?
The Christ. The Christ self.
Yeah, he's not talking about the person, Jesus. He's talking about the Christ. Throughout the New Testament, this is something that I think Mrs. Evans pointed out a long time ago, which was really helpful to me. Every time Jesus refers to I, he's not referring to the person, Jesus. He's referring to the Christ. And that's where a lot of people get messed up when they try to literally interpret the Bible, and they think that it's personal. None of this is personal. Jesus knew that he was not a human being. He was not brain, blood, bones, and a skeleton and stuff. He knew that his true identity was the Christ, the image and likeness, the one God, which is Spirit.
And in his teaching, he was explaining the divine principle, love. Not to judge, to love another as oneself, and all the things that he taught.
Yeah, so when he's telling them that he is the true vine, he's pointing them to the Christ. And his example, which will lead them to the Christ. But he's warning them they have to get past him as a person to the example of what is motivating him, of what is governing him.
I like the use of the word true also. He didn't say I'm the vine, because the true vine then is, here is the example. This is what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So it also implies that there's a counterfeit.
Yes.
So you make sure that the Christ, is the true vine, and that will distinguish you from knowing the counterfeit. Because if you know the real thing, you won't be fooled by the counterfeit.
I think it also says that there's not a need for like a more refined version to come later, taking care of that part.
And this Christ truth is nourishing us today. We let it. That is his point. It's here now for us to be nourished by.
So if we stay, sorry.
Go ahead.
If we stay as the branches, like he was asking these disciples to do, then we will be fed too by the true vine.
Yes.
Kind of like the idea of using the simile of a vine. Because a vine is something that grows and it reaches into places that you might not think it goes. It sends out branches. And it's kind of a similar way when the seed of Christ is planted in the heart and mind of people. It reaches places in the mind. It reaches places in your being. And so this vine grows and touches all aspects of your being and your life, kind of like a vine does on a trellis or whatever. It goes places.
Thank you. The Bible says the law goes into your inward parts. I love to think of that. That's true of this truth, this Christ truth that's nourishing us. It's going into all our inward parts, everywhere. Nothing is lost. So, sorry, I'm getting a Bluetooth.
Well, and he uses the verb abide to describe what it takes to be a good branch, doesn't he? If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, ye shall ask what ye will, and it shall be done unto you. Herein is my Father glorified, that ye bear much fruit. So he is instructing us to abide in him. Not the man, Jesus, but the Christ.
Yeah, over and over again we are getting this instruction of the 91st Psalm, too, to dwell in the secret place of the Most High, dwell, abide. That's to live in the Christ, which means to imbibe his beatitudes. This is why we're studying these things, so we know what that means. We have to live here, not just periodically visit, but live.
This is also a very special vine. It's not just any old grapevine, which could have wild and sour grapes. It's cultured, nurtured, and comes from God. And then we receive that nutrition through the Christ.
Yeah, because there were people who thought that there was a God of, God of agriculture and a God of rain and a God of this and that. So there was a lot of superstition going around in those days, just as there is today. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting, too, in studying this, because I never had realized it before, but in the book of John, they say that there are 7 statements of Jesus declaring, I am. The first is, I am the bread of life. What does that mean?
The sustenance of living.
Thank you. The sustenance of living. Second is, I am the light of the world. What is that? Showing the way.
Showing us the way.
Wisdom and understanding.
Inspiration of all understanding.
Not just yes, the whole world, like the sun, shines, and it dispels the darkness. Christ is the light of the world. Then I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. What does that mean?
Only one way
everyone
to
had to come through him.
Yes. Only one way. If you go that way, you will find pasture, and you can come in and out. And then, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. What is that?
Caring for us.
Divine love.
Divine love, caring for us.
And of course, he did lay down his life. He did lay down his life for us.
And that's how we can tell the good shepherd. A good shepherd is one that is willing to do all, unselfed. Eddie certainly was a good shepherd. And then I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die.
Well, he proved life eternal.
He did. Therefore we can too. That's what he's saying, isn't it? If you believe in him, you'll never see death.
What does it mean to believe in him?
Really understand what he is.
Yes. Understand the principle behind his teachings and example.
And to liveth, it says, and to liveth and believeth in me. Liveth in, you have to live in him.
That shows that you really understand it.
And then number 6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except by me. This is a little different from the gate.
Well, it seems to counter a lot of this thought that there's so many different truths out there.
Yes.
Yes.
It does counter that. It has to be. Mrs. Eddy calls it Christ Christianity. It's making it very plain here. I mean, and this isn't my opinion or the opinion of Christian scientists. This is the Christ speaking. He is the way, and no man will come to the Father except through him, through his principles, his laws, his beatitudes. You can't get to the Father unless you're willing to forgive. You can't get to the Father unless you're meek. You can't get to the Father unless you're pure in heart, humble, all the things we've been talking about. Go ahead, Florence.
No, I was saying maybe that's why she said that the only requirement to become a Christian scientist is to see that Christian science is the way, is the only way.
Thank you.
Yep.
Have that on our membership application. So we don't ask you, if you smoke or drink or whatever. We ask you if you accept that as Christian Science as the way and the only way. And if you do that, everything else will follow.
And may I add something? These are things that I must earn, T-I-M-E, time.
Oh, okay. Things that I must earn. Time. Thank you.
As in the first quote of that day.
Right. Okay, and then the last, number 7, is?
The true vine.
Yes, I am the true vine. The I am statements in John, they're only found in John, of what the Christ is, what it means to us.
I thought it was important to note that in these basically a farewell sermon that Jesus is giving to his disciples. That right before this chapter, the paragraph says, "Arise, let us go hence." He's saying, let's rise and go forward, and he's giving them this discourse on himself as the Christ.
Yes. This is all very profound, what we are reading and studying, and to take it deeply into our hearts.
I know when I read the Bible, you have to kind of really look at each word and really think about what it means. And I think Christian Science has helped me tremendously with that. The proper interpretation of what's being said, because if I ever read the Bible before, it was just words, just human words, you know. But when you put them into a higher sense of things, it makes so much sense.
You're right. You're right. And this is why, you know, as we're going to get into the end, why studying of the Word is so important. It doesn't make sense on a superficial level, but when you get into it and begin to understand it and practice it, it makes so much sense. What did you say, Jeremy, about studying the Bible?
Oh, I don't know. I after all the Bible studies we've had with different things, you know, going over the strange women that Solomon and all that, I just think, oh, I really wish I had this 20 years ago. I would have avoided so much suffering. But at least it didn't happen 20 years later.
Right. Better now than never.
But I think
You're
maybe now you even appreciate it more. It goes in more because of what you've suffered before. You know, we've all suffered before. It makes it, you know, here's something that really makes sense. Finally, something that really makes sense.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
That's how I feel. That it means so much more to me now because of my experiences and things. It's incredible to me. Take it right into my heart now, and whereas before I was so filled with anger and all that, I was missing half of it. Wasn't getting it at all. But with Christian Science, it's amazing.
I think that's the earning part.
It is.
Well, that's also why we can be so grateful to Mrs. Eddy for going through what she went through to give us what she's given us. I mean, it is the comforter that Jesus prophesied. It is the Spirit of truth. She talks about how difficult it is to express divine concepts in human words. And that's why she says it's the inspired word of the Bible. Make it clear that, you know, it was written with inspiration. It was written in human words, but there was an inspiration behind it. And we have to read it with that same inspiration in order to get what's behind the words. And that's why what Mrs. Eddy has done for us is so invaluable. Give us a higher concept of the truth. To open our understanding.
You know, last night we were someplace listening to an author speak about a book he'd written. But he made a point that I never thought about before. And he was saying that, you know, books, well, and I guess it has been said before, but books are companions. So, in other words, anytime if you feel alone, you open up a book and you have a friend in that book, and certainly in our Bible.
If it's a good book.
Yeah,
the right book, though.
we commune. Mrs. Evans used to say we're communing with the saints. You open up Martha Wilcox. She's with you. And certainly this is my point here. You're talking to the Christ here, communing with you, right there with you. So never alone. Never. All
That
these
is so
friends.
true.
And I feel it. Don't you feel it? I feel it when you pick up a good book like the Bible and like Science and Health. So you're never alone.
This is actually very encouraging because it says the father is the husbandman. And, reading Science and Health, it's very revolutionary. And I have to admit, there have been times I'd read a statement, it goes in one ear and out the other. Next day I'd read it again. But then, something happens at some point in time in the future and it clicks. Whoa, this is it. Well, where did that, whoa, this is it come from? It's the Father that dwelleth within you, the kingdom of God within you, that finally registers in that Father who is the husbandman, caring for this vine of spirit that's in us. Each individual's experience is different, but it's the same Father working for all of us.
And what is the definition of husbandman?
One I got was the land worker.
Yeah.
That's the farmer who cares for the plant.
Alternative, yeah.
Farmer with a capital F.
I love about tending the vines of grapes. We know a grape grower in Napa, and he spends hours with his vines. Each vine, he has his little scissors and tends to it just so that it will produce the most fruit. You don't just let the vines go, but each one has to be carefully tended throughout the year or throughout the season. And I just think that's so beautiful because no two plants are the same, and God is tending to each of us so that we bear the most fruit. That's just a beautiful parable.
Thank you, that is. Thank you very much.
That makes me think of the Good Shepherd also, who at the end of the day, after they've done their rounds with the sheep, takes each one and examines them to see if anything, any tick or any injury or anything. It's just a tender caring that it touches the heart, really.
Yeah, it's a beautiful analogy to nature. If any of you ever have had a garden, you know the truth of the pruning.
Years ago, a lady I worked with gave me seeds for giant pumpkins. And so I grew them, and what you're supposed to do is trim off all but one and just let that one get really, really, really big. But I didn't have the heart to do it. I just got a bunch of big pumpkins. But that was really, because of that, I get a little more appreciation.
Yeah. Anyone else on that?
And the pruning?
It is very satisfying to have a garden. It just recalls my memory that in the Second World War, as a child, I got my own Leaf of Victory vegetable garden. And it's a wonderful experience to be involved that way with the earth and watch the things grow.
Because the joy that God gets in watching us grow, and tenderly caring for everything in our life.
You're totally dependent on the husbandman to do it. You can't make anything grow.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead
You're
with that,
supposed
Mike.
to keep it watered.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing on pruning, it's really an art form, and then to take it one step further now, it's really a religious experience. I mean, it has to come from God. I, unfortunate, even having been a farmer all those years, the experience with pruning was always negative because I never really was taught how to do it properly. One can over prune in destroy the plant also. So as the person had pointed out, it's a very, each plant, each species has its own way of being done, and it's just something that a machine can't do. And anybody thinks that farming is easy or only dumb people can do it, well, they can, but it's like everything else. You have to go with the experience, and the best experience, again, is communing with God. There's a Native American professor who has been doing some writing and work on and explaining how the Native Americans went about things. What fascinated me was that they really farmed their whole environment, because the way they prayerfully interacted with all the plants, how they harvested, how they would do something for the plant in return for the bounty, it was all very integrated with God, and thus successful. And it can't be just left to machines. And an example, too, is even with the withered branches being thrown in the fire. Well, if that withered branch was withered because it had maybe, let's say, in a material sense, a fungus, the fire puts an end to it. That's as far as it goes. As today, with trying to do everything with machines, for example, when the wheat is harvested today, any weed, the seeds get dropped back onto the ground instead of being taken off like the tares and burned. So then you have a bigger problem because you've replanted, taken off the wheat, and you've left all the weeds there. So it's just such an amazing thing. I really wish I had known the Bible. I think I don't think, I know it would have made my farming so much better. And the truth that Jesus taught in the parables and talked about in the parables really should still be applied today in that form.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for your expertise. Yes, very beautiful.
And when you prune, you have to do it with love.
That's for sure. Yeah. Otherwise you'll rip everything apart.
Yeah.
I know, well, kind of along the line of what Mike said, with computers, they say if you automate something that's inefficient, it is just going to make a big thing that's more inefficient.
Yeah, that is something. You have to do it with love and caring. Well, love is always the answer, isn't it? Love is liberated. That's why last week we talked about if you're doing something without love, to stop. Because it will do just as you've been describing. Something even worse will come. Anyone else with that one?
One thing I forgot was that I got out of Matthew Henry was that the Hebrew word used for burning of the withered branches was really quite fascinating. It isn't like a flash, like a piece of grass, dry grass that it's a flare and gone. It's a burning forever type of thing. So that's the warning against being a withered branch.
Wow. Yeah.
Does that take us to number 4?
So what is the distinction between purging the branch and casting it forth?
When you cast it forth, you're basically getting rid of it. It's not bearing any fruit at all. But when you purge a branch, or in some cases you just pinch one a little bit, you're encouraging better growth and more growth. And setting up that branch to do much better.
Yes, the word purging means cleansing, purifying, carrying off impurities.
I like that idea of purging, because I was thinking about how it's been said here we can't rest on our laurels. Well, if he took away what we did, that there's nothing to keep looking at. We just got to move forward.
Well, and that's it. If you're actually of use to God, if you're doing what God has for you to do, He's going to kind of cleanse you of the things that prevent you from doing even more. So if you've got any hidden agenda, something you want to cling to that keeps you from doing what you should do for God, God will prune that from you so that you will be even better able to do more for Him and for mankind.
And it is said it's producing fruit. The purge to produce fruit. And remember, who is it that produces the fruit?
God.
God does.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows the fruit? What is the fruit of the Spirit? Any of you know? Jeremy knows.
Jeremy wrote about it.
Oh, yeah.
It is love, joy, peace.
Long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance.
And by their fruits, what?
Ye shall know them.
Shall be known. Ye shall be.
So, have a self-examination. Are you known by these fruits? Say them again, Jeremy.
Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance.
Are you known by that? Are you an old grumpy old prune?
What kind of fruit? A prune or a juicy plum?
Right.
Well, wherever you go, do people feel your love? Do you uplift? Do they sense your joy and positive outlook? Do they feel the peace and the dominion that you have over whatever situation might be? You leave every place you pass by better for your having been there. That's the fruit of the Spirit.
In other words, do you bring the Christ wherever you go?
Yeah, and the Christ does the work, but are you abiding in the Spirit or not? And if you're not, if you have no interest in doing that, well, you're going to be, your whole branch is going to be broken off and thrown into the fire.
Matthew Henry said, the more fruit we bring forth, the more we abound in that which is good, the more the Lord is glorified. And that's our whole purpose.
Yeah. And what's the definition of Christ? Does anybody know it?
Divine manifestation of God which comes to the flesh to destroy incarnate error.
Yeah. It destroys incarnate error. That's the burning of the branch in the fire. It destroys the incarnate error that would prevent you from abiding in the Christ and producing fruit.
It is wonderful the way it is produced. It's not something you work at to be, that you humanly, that you're humanly loving or humanly gentle or humanly joyful. That won't work because I did try that for a long time. Doesn't work. This is in effect, right?
Yes, it's reflecting. It just happens.
Happens when you abide. It's a big difference. And then too, I was thinking. I used to think, well, the fruit, by their fruits ye shall know them. Well, that was healing work, and that is true. But then, when you think of all of this, all of the list of the fruits of the Spirit, I mean, this is very specific. Yeah, those fruits do result in healing, because it's the Christ, and it will rebuke flesh.
It will heal whatever is wrong.
It will heal whatever is wrong. So this week, think about the fruits of the Spirit, all these qualities, and how much you're producing it, not forcing it, having it happen. I know for myself, since I found this church and studied science more thoroughly, all of these things, I feel much closer to these qualities than I used to. I'm not such a nervous wreck, fearful, negative. I do feel the peace and the joy that abiding in the Christ brings, produces.
Reading the commentaries, I think purging also is used there as a very refined pruning. So maybe in the order of things, you can uproot the whole tree, you can hew it down, you can take off a branch, you can prune it, and then the best is to purge the whole thing and refine it. It makes me think of the original Christian Science church that he came into. People were wonderful. They were all second and third generation Christian scientists, and they weren't doing the pruning and the purging. They were just kind of going along, letting the tree or the vine just do what it was going to do and didn't worry about it. Seemed, and that's, I think, where Christian Science got lost. And for example, at Plainfield, there's a lot of purging and proper pruning going on.
Yeah, it's called handling animal magnetism. Mike, thank you for bringing that up.
And when you're abiding in the Christ and these fruits are being produced, as we've talked about, they will repel. There'll be a law of annihilation against everything unlike themselves. That keeps the church pruned.
And Mrs. Eddy instructs us, Christian scientists, be a law unto yourself.
Mental malpractice shall not harm you when either asleep or when awake. And in the lesson this week, Malachi, and he shall sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Now, on our website, we have a really good article. Jeremy, you'll have to find it and put it on the carousel. It's about that. It's about the refining of silver.
Oh, yeah.
Does anyone remember that?
Silversmith.
Silversmith. Remember it, please?
I do remember, because the silversmith puts the silver, the raw silver, under intense heat. And then the question is asked, well, how do you know when it's done? Is when I can see my reflection in it.
Reflection, yeah.
That's beautiful.
It's called the Master Silversmith.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good one. So don't ever get discouraged when your branches are being pruned or being purged or refined.
And sometimes the more used you are to God, the more you will be purged. It just happens that way. Like Mike just described, people are sound asleep being second or third, fourth generations. They're sleeping on in their self-satisfaction. So Kara leaves them alone. But when you're coming out of that, want to be of use to God, produce the fruit, well, sometimes there'll be some purging. And that's always a good thing, which leads us to the next question.
Just to go back to what you said about the second generation, I just was thinking of in the lesson it says, nor by pinning one's faith without works to another's vicarious efforts.
Exactly. Thank you.
Right. You can't inherit Christian Science. You have to earn it for yourself.
And we're back to earning it.
My observation has been those that are satisfied with where they are and just sleeping on, they're not doing anything for anybody else. It's all selfishly directed. I mean, they don't make any effort to go and help somebody else, do anything for someone else. And one of the commandments is to love your neighbor as yourself. But you can't love your neighbor if you're just engrossed with yourself, how wonderful things are for you only.
Yeah, and that's the time when you'll go to a Wednesday evening meeting, and it's all about, all the wonderful things Christian Science has done for me, myself and I, or you go to a Thanksgiving service and, all my family are here this year and I'm having a great time and you're not. Because that's usually about how you feel when you listen to a testimony like that. Well, good for you.
Don't you wish you were me?
Yeah, don't you wish you were me? I have this great big family and they're all here and we're just having a high old time. And believe me, that's what goes on. It can go on. We got to be very careful. It never goes on here.
I gave one of those testimonies years and years ago, and I'll never forget it. I remember hurting someone. And what turned out also was I was in deep denial. What I thought was so wonderful was not.
Thank you, Linda.
So in truth, sorry.
Well, some people think that's what you're supposed to say, that, that's a great demonstration. You go to church and you tell everybody how wonderful your life is. Then that's a healing, and that's a demonstration, and it isn't. It's casting a stone on your brother's heart.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Florence.
But in truth, really, you're not doing so much for yourself either. Because unless you're really learning it, if you were really learning the truth, you wouldn't be so selfish about or self-centered about what you think you're doing.
So. Right.
Exactly. Selfishness is not your friend. Absolutely
and
right.
as last week's lesson said, it doesn't enter the practice of Christian Science.
Exactly. Not at all.
My observation of a Wednesday meeting at a church where everybody was self-satisfied was that there was just a lot of silence. Nobody would get up and say much of anything else, which just indicates how empty selfishness is.
Okay, Luann, we've got a couple minutes here.
Yep.
Okay, the last question. How are we made clean through the Word?
This is interesting to me because I was reading one of Spurgeon's sermons, and we've talked a lot about affliction, right? Affliction being beneficial. But he makes a point, and he says, well, affliction isn't necessarily beneficial. When you think about it, a lot of people are afflicted, and they are just afflicted, right? They're just miserable. Is that not true?
Yeah, well, definitely.
So what is the difference?
It'll only help you if you. It'll only help you if you learn from it.
Well, he brings out the point. It is the Word coming to us in affliction that purifies. That's the cleansing power of the Word. And I said how that is so true, because in my affliction, if I hadn't had the Word to turn to, if I hadn't God's Word to turn to, I'd still be sitting here afflicted. That's why all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are called according to His purpose. The Word is what purifies. It is the Word. And you can have the Word purify yourself without affliction. You can, through science or suffering.
Yes.
Spurgeon says that affliction, he said, affliction makes us ready to feel the Word, but the true pruner is the Word of God. There is no more tendency in affliction to sanctify as in prosperity. In fact, affliction can cause rebellion. And we've seen that. People get afflicted, they blame God, and they rebel, and there's no God, and they hate God. So the Word is what purifies and cleanses, and I thought that was a really good point. And that's why we need to study the Word. And people who think they don't need it, well, they put themselves in a very difficult situation because you're afflicted and there's no answer.
And there's one other piece to this puzzle. How are we made clean? Through the Word?
By taking it in and living it.
Thank you. By obeying it. And not
Obeying.
getting distracted by whether it's affliction or prosperity. By not getting distracted from our obedience to the Christ.
That was the falling down of the Christian Science that I was speaking about, because they didn't know how to properly teach it to the next generation. They tried to just give them the glory of it, the good of it, without giving them the way of applying it themselves.
Wow. It's got to be passed down to generations. And our
Right, but what I'm saying is properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody has to learn to obey for themselves, which means everybody has to cultivate their own spiritual sense so they can hear the Word in the first place. What did Jesus say? If you love me,
Keep my commandments.
yeah, obey, keep my commandments.
And you do have to know them first. So that's why you study them.
And I have to thank this church for teaching me obedience. It is a foreign idea to me. Even after having grown up in Christian Science, nobody was tough with me. Nobody challenged me. And this church challenged me, and thank you.
Well, we can all thank this church, Mrs. Evans, and the good workers who went before. There is a remnant. We can be grateful for it.
Yeah. Okay. 11 o'clock.
Thank you, Luann.
Thank you,
everybody.
Luann. That was excellent topic, Luann.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And I know you all are going to sign up for future Bible studies, and thank you, Tom, for signing up for next week.